Okay, are we ready to go? Oh, hold on, I need my little starter thing here. We're gonna start and, yeah, because she's gonna be a little bit. Okay, trustees, I will now call. Better? You hear that? Or is it just me? Okay. 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 Is it? Okay, we'll try this again. We're good. Okay, take two. Good evening, everyone. I will now call to order this public meeting of School District 73 on the 12th day of February, 2024. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting tonight on the territory of the Secwepemc people, specifically the Tecumseh Secwepemc. I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting. I'd like to outline our expected conduct of everyone present in this meeting to remain respectful at all times. Rude or foul language and aggressive or abusive behavior, such as outbursts, will not be tolerated. We also consider inflammatory statements, remarks of a racial or discriminatory nature, and unsubstantial allegations to be abusive behavior. Should this occur, I feel the meeting is no longer manageable. I will call a short recess where staff, trustees, and invited guests will remove themselves from the meeting. If there are any further disturbances, the RCMP will be called. Please ensure your cell phones are on silent so that this meeting is not interrupted. We also do not give our consent to be recorded, so all recording devices must be turned off. I'd like to thank everyone for being here and welcome you. Board Chair Grieve has a conflicting schedule this evening and will be joining us, so I will be chairing this evening's meeting. I'd like to now call for adoption of the public regular minutes from the from the meeting of January 29th, 2024. Moved by Trustee Karpuk. Seconded by Trustee McKelvey. Are there any errors, additions, deletions to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. I would now like to call for a motion to accept the consent agenda for this evening. Moved by Trustee Kang, seconded by Trustee Hickson. Is there anything trustees wish to lift from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will call the question on the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none opposed, the motion carries. Thank you. I will now call the question on the agenda as presented. I'll now ask for a motion on the agenda as presented. Moved by Trustee Karpuk, seconded by Trustee Kang. Are there any additions or deletions to this evening's agenda? Oh, Trustee Zinn. Excellent. Are there any further additions or deletions this evening? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question on the agenda as amended. All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. We will now move to this evening's education topic. This evening is numeracy. Superintendent Nixon.
Thank you through you, Board Chair Kershaw, to the community and to the board. Last year, the numeracy team shared an approach to balanced literacy to promote the development of mathematical reasoning and critical thinking in our students. Tonight, we're delighted to have you narrow that focus and show us how you support a common understanding of fluency to utilize key models and strategies leading to deep understanding of numeracy and mathematics. I'll now ask Director Carson to introduce the numeracy team.
Thank you, Dr. Nixon, Vice Chair Kershaw, and members of the board and senior team. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the numeracy team tonight. I was at an elementary school this past week, and I'd like to share a comment from a grade 2 teacher. She said, "It's so exciting what's happening with numeracy. There's a real buzz about it throughout the district." Yes, there is. And it's due in no small part to the team I'm about to introduce you to tonight. We have Monica Bergeron, the district numeracy coordinator, Darren Clark, district resource teacher for intermediate, and Stacy Kutzer, district resource teacher for primary. Please join me.
See if you can hear me from here. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Perfect. Okay, so thank you, Director Carson, and I would like to thank the board for having the numeracy team here today. I'm so excited to share with you all the work that has been happening in the district around numeracy. Working as a team has been instrumental in the positive changes we are witnessing around teacher pedagogy and student understanding in mathematics. In the interest of time, the team has allowed me to be the one that speaks on our behalf, but please note that the work is absolutely a collaborative effort. Last year, we spoke to you about the vision of balanced numeracy in School District 73. I want to review just a few key parts of this vision to help frame our conversation tonight. Number sense is referring to the foundational building block of mathematics, where students work on understanding number relationships and operations. On the bottom right is computational fluency, which is developed over time and begins with number sense. And we get there by exposing students to different strategies to develop flexibility, efficiency, and accuracy. Our vision of balanced numeracy works with the district strategic plan and the district learning plan to effectively achieve the ultimate goal, creating numerate educated citizens. Throughout the presentation, you will see the icon at the top representing the multi-year plan with the 5-year district strategic plan, and on the icon on the bottom when speaking to the district learning plan. By putting the focus on building number sense and developing computational fluency, we have been able to deliver an accessible and targeted approach to building mathematical understanding in School District 73. Incorporating the use of models and strategies into math programs will help to effectively build number sense and computational fluency. So tonight, I would like to start with extending an invitation to you to experience building strategic thinking. So let's consider the question, 25 multiplied by 48. Traditionally, we would have lined it up in this format, and instead, I'd like to invite you to consider the strategy of doubling and halving. So if we double the 25 and cut the 48 in half, we would get 50 multiplied by 24, which is helpful, but we can do even better if we do that process one more time. So if we again multiply the first number by 2 and then divide the second number by 2, we will get 100 multiplied by 12, which is 1200. That's what we said. So why does this strategy work? It's not a trick. So why does this strategy work? When we look at a piece of paper, let's say that is 25 by 48, that's the length and the width of that rectangle. And then we look at physically cutting that piece of paper in half along the 48 edge. We can see that it then becomes 2 pieces of paper, same area, but 2 pieces of paper. And then when we stack them, we get a rectangle that is 50 by 24. If we do that process again and cut the 24 and then stack them again, we will get a rectangle that is 12 by 100. So what will happen is you have the same piece of paper, it's just cut differently, and all of those rectangles have a total area of 1200. This is an example of the associative property. It's not a trick, it's just great visualization of a mathematics concept. And this is just one strategy we are working on with teachers and intermediate students. Using different models like this to teach all students really helps our diverse learners enter into more difficult mathematics concepts. It is crucial that we build a common understanding of fluency as well. So to start the school year right, on the September Pro D Day, the numeracy team had entire staffs from 9 schools, including 4 rural schools, attend a half-day workshop with us to work on what true fluency looks like in a math classroom, how to embed strategic work into teaching operations, and the importance of fluency as an equity issue. There are a few quotes from the anchor text that we use that I'd like to share with you. One is about the importance of procedural fluency as a critical component of balanced mathematics instruction and how the strategy selection is important to student development of decision-making. The second is about how fluency work speaks to equity and that it provides diverse learning opportunities to ensure an entry point for all learners. I'd like to give you an overview of how we build mathematical fluency all the way from K to 7. So down at the bottom, you see utilities. These are the building blocks for number sets. This serves as the foundation for the work we need to do with students around the development of strategies and fluency. After the utilities have been embedded and provided the foundation, we need to develop the key automaticities, which is on the left-hand side there. And these are the skills that eventually become automatic to students. These are important so that we can then build strategies like the halving and doubling strategy that we showed you earlier. 3 examples of supports that we are currently using with teachers are these companion books for the Figuring Out Fluency anchor text, teacher guides for strategies, and they're linked right there for you, and fluency mats, all of which speak directly to the district learning plan goal of integrating models and strategies to help build computational fluency in intermediate classrooms. Strategies are important to embed into our mathematics teaching practice in intermediate grades, but it is critical that the number sense work starts in K to 3. Students need to develop those utilities to enter into operation strategies and fluency work in later years. So we started with working with our kindergarten teachers by having them all attend a workshop to learn about decomposing numbers and the use of 10 frames, and just as importantly, learn about the role that they play in developing those utilities. We have received positive feedback about the difference it's making for student understanding already. And here are some pictures of a kindergarten class at Aberdeen Elementary using 10 frames as a way to represent their number of the day. We also continued our work to build strong primary numeracy programs by doing 2 key things. Every grade 1 teacher in the district came to what to look for training. The anchor text is on the right there, and received a class set of Rec and Recs, and that's the model down at the bottom left, thanks in part to a joint venture between the numeracy department and the early learning team. Teachers have told us that the difference they are seeing with the use of Rec and Recs in their classrooms has been amazing. When we hear students excited to show their work and being able to decompose numbers so well, we know they're headed forward in a positive way mathematically. So this is a picture of how they could use a Rec and Rec. The integration of mathematical models like this Rec and Rec have been supporting the growth of foundational numeracy skills. So this is how a student could use this to model 6 plus 6 and then see it as 10 plus 2, so they can decompose those numbers. While that is helpful to see, it is even more impactful to hear from our students. Student voice is such a powerful way to show the learning happening in the district. So we want to share this video of a grade 2 student named Maverick using a Rec and Rec to answer a question. Let's see if our video works.
Hi, Maverick.
Hi,
How are you?
good.
Good. Hey, what math tool are you using today?
A Rec and Rec.
Okay, and what do you find a Rec and Rec is helpful for?
It's good for subtraction and addition and sum.
Okay. Like finding the sum?
Yeah,
Very cool. What does that mean, finding the sum?
like adding it.
Okay, the adding answer. I'm going to show you a question, Maverick, and I'd like you to use your Rec and Rec and demonstrate for me how you would use a Rec and Rec to solve this question. You
Okay.
ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is 15 plus 4. Can you show me what you would do to solve that equation with your Rec and Rec?
5, 10, 15, plus 4 more would be 19.
All right. And can you count them out for me?
5, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
Awesome. I also noticed this. Did you notice this pattern? If you
Yeah.
added this, how many would you have?
20,
Yeah, so what's 20 minus 1?
19.
19. Back to the answer you got. Okay, thanks so much, Maverick. That was awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
He's the star of the show. The second main thing that we've been working on in primary grades is the development of the number sense assessment, a math assessment for grades 1 to 3, and the teacher supports with implementation. This assessment is one for and of learning and speaks directly to the work that teachers are doing in the classrooms. This formative proficiency-based assessment will identify learner needs and determine areas of focus for classroom instruction and intervention. We have 2 quotes from teachers that are piloting the NSA here. The first one says, "I love hearing how the students' brains are working. I'm blown away by what 7-year-olds can do. The NSA is really informative and helpful." Another speaks to the NSA's potential to develop number sense in future grades, and it says, "With all of us using aligned common assessments and practices across primary, just think where our grade 4s will be in a couple of years." Here's some street data that makes me so proud of the work we are doing. Students from a grade 1-2 class at Raft River are working with different strategies for addition. I want to highlight 3 things here that make me so proud of the students and teachers in this district. First of all, this learning is at a rural school, so it's so important that they were there at our professional development rate in September. The second thing, teachers are making strategies come alive in their classrooms by digging into the supports we offer and then enhancing their pedagogy. And third, students are becoming more confident, fluent thinkers in math. Just look at the strategy of compensation that one child is using to make 38 plus 57 a more accessible question. He's adding 3 to one number and taking 3 away from the other number to make an equivalent question of 35 plus 60. What a fantastic strategy. And I love this quote from a grade 1 teacher when presenting the grade 1 NSA to her student. He replied with, "There's no possibility that I won't know how to do this. I am so good at math now." I know. We continue to develop School District 73 teacher numeracy by bringing in renowned mathematics educator Carol Fullerton on the December Pro D Day to work with 260 of our K-7 teachers. She helped bring to life the concepts around fluency and further develop the integration of mathematical models and strategies that support these foundational numeracy skills. The feedback from our Fullerton event has been fantastic, and teachers are using these resources in their classroom. Here we have pictures of a grade 2 class working with some of her lessons around using benchmark numbers to help them add and subtract. We're pleased to say that Carol will be joining School District 73 again on the April Pro D, this time to talk about how to authentically teach place value from grades 1 to 7. In addition to working with teachers around strategies for the 4 main operations, the next place our number sense and computational fluency work needs to take us is to focus on a targeted approach to understanding fractions. So, our next numeracy workshop this spring will be a day of learning for grade 5 teachers focused on the big idea around fraction. Developing true conceptual understanding for intermediate students is so important for students to enter into work with operations in grade 8. Without a true understanding of fractions in grade 8, students often find it difficult to enter into the world of rational numbers in grade 9. Based on experience, a lack of true understanding of both fractions and integers has been a key issue around many senior math students unable to make sense of more complex ideas. Everyone plays a role in the K-12 students' journey to becoming an educated numerate citizen. The work for our grade 10 to 12 students starts in grade 4 to 6. Development of computational fluency strategies further assists students with the critical thinking and problem-solving skills required to meaningfully engage with the numeracy cycle. There are new supports available for the DNA, the District Numeracy Assessment, including a revised rubric, an extensive student checklist, and sample tasks using real-life problems. All of these will help teachers implement effective numeracy approaches so that students can interpret, apply, analyze, and communicate with flexibility through the lens of the numeracy cycle. We also continue to work on building staff capacity to teach from a culturally sensitive stance with our interdisciplinary projects with the ABED department. Last year, we developed a Pit House project for grade 8 students, and it's available on the Indigenous Math Network now, and some of our teachers are preparing to use it in the spring. This year, we're working on a new project with grade 6-7 teachers from Dallas Elementary around designing an Indigenous garden that will highlight their spatial awareness and measurement skills, as well as working with local Indigenous plants and First Peoples principles of learning. And we also have K-3 Aboriginal education numeracy kits available. And here we can see a grade 3 student at Raft River doing patterning work with one of the kits. I want to say that we really appreciated last year you mentioned the involvement of parents in our work. And we've been thinking about the community connection and ways to support student learning that extends past the classroom. So we have about 300 teachers using Matific And this is something available to parents as well. And in addition to various online supports, we also look forward to hosting the Gauss contest and working with grade sevens around the district. Last year, we had 15 schools participate in a half-day event at the group that included not only writing the contest, but team challenges that were stations run by the grade 12 calculus class at NORCAM. We hope this year's event will be just as rewarding and successful. And we're also looking forward to supporting family math nights in the spring, where students will be showcasing their skills through games they can then play at home with their families that emphasize strategic thinking. Thank you for spending time with our numeracy team here tonight, diving further into the vision of balanced numeracy and allowing us to share with you the work we are doing around specifically putting number sense and computational fluency into action. This concludes our presentation for the evening.
Thank you so much for that. You're always so incredibly articulate about numeracy. And I think that when I listen to it here, it makes so much sense. And sometimes when a parent asks me a question, I freeze up. But I have to say that in the last couple of months, I have found myself on very high number of occasions out-computated by my 14-year-old who can come to the answer far quicker than I can with my older style of coming to those answers. So I think that that goes to speak to the strength of the program. Trustees, do you have questions? Trustee Hickson.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I look back at these exercises very fondly because I remember being a student, we had to do these math competitions. And I got ha ha. Good comment. Yeah, I'm just curious, is there integration with calculators in any of these fields? I just remember being as a kid, I always wondered, it's like, why are we learning a lot of these when we could just use calculators? And now in a time where our phones are nebulous, it seems like it'd be a cool tool to introduce alongside with a lot of these exercises. I know there's a lot of studies to prove that it actually enhances mathematical learning. So I'm just curious about what your perspectives on that is.
Did you want to answer? Okay. I talked a lot, so.
I think the main purpose with these strategies is we all have, I mean, most kids have calculators, but with many of these strategies, once they start to become automatic or closer to automatic, they will actually be able to calculate things without their calculator. You give me big enough numbers, I'm pulling out a calculator. All we're trying to do is extend their capability, be able to compute and use their number sense strategies to solve quicker. But everybody's got a threshold and we're just trying to, I think, extend that a little bit further. But you're right, the calculator is a helpful tool, but not necessarily one that we need to default to straight away.
Thank you. Trustees, other questions? Trustee Jules.
So it always amazes me, your presentations, especially tonight about when you put 25 times 40, I'm thinking I'm already going the old way, trying to figure it out, right? And then when you break it down within less than a minute, you have the answer, which I'm still trying to figure out. I'm just on, the 8 times 4 kind of thing. I'm wondering if, because I revert back to that, that's what I was taught. But the students nowadays are learning this way of doing math. Do we do a course or a parent engagement series or anything like that? So that myself, if I have my nieces or nephews for a while and they have homework to do, I'm not going like, no, this is how you do it. And they're saying, no, Auntie, this is how we do it. And then I'll just let them go. They'll probably amaze me with what they're doing. But I'm thinking as a parent or even as a caregiver, for the student to come home with this kind of homework and then to flip my thinking over to how the student is thinking to be able to engage in their homework process. Is that something that I'm assuming that I'm not the first one that answered the question, first Auntie that kind of went help me?
I think you're not the first person. Thank you for your question. And you're not the first person that said that. In fact, I thought that too. I thought, what is going to happen when they go home? But if you saw those companion books that we have, right? So in there, when we talk about the strategy, there's actually a handout that goes home with parents. So then it's in parent-friendly language. And so that, first of all, will help. The second thing that will help is like about reverting back to the algorithm. We're not necessarily saying don't teach the algorithm. What we're saying is do the strategies first so that you can understand if your answer makes sense. Because if a student does the algorithm, it becomes an all or nothing thing. You either do it right with all the steps or you get it wildly wrong. And students don't have the ability then to kind of go, whoa, that was way off. And it becomes a real have not. Whereas if we have strategies and we have different strategies, because that was one out of the 6 multiplication strategies that we're showing them in addition to the algorithm. So then once a student has all those abilities, then everybody has a way to enter into that learning. And it's pretty neat when you can say, share your thinking instead of just show your work. And now everyone's having a conversation about math. So that's a great point, though. We haven't think about that.
Thank you. Trustee Sim?
Yeah, I thought it was great. So I just wanted to recapture what you're saying is for linear thinkers who really are comfortable, 28 times 40, that is still a use in the classroom. Is that right?
Okay, so let's see, how am I going to say this? Yes, it's useful in the classroom. However, I would strongly suggest that we try to incorporate strategies first. And here's why. When we multiply a 2-digit by 2-digit number and we use the strategy we all grew up with, they're only ever multiplying single digit numbers. So they never really get an understanding of the magnitude of a number. They don't really understand how big that answer should be because they never see it. Now they have to engage in things like cutting the piece of paper to truly make sense of that. They have to go through those things. But once they've ingrained that whole doubling and halving, they don't have to cut the piece of paper anymore. Now they trust the process and they trust that it works all the time. But it does take some time to embed that numeracy knowledge in them. But when we do the algorithm, we're only multiplying 1 digit by 1 digit over and over again. And then that's why kids are lost when they get past 12 times 12 on that table. Is that sort of answer?
Sort of. I mean, I not being an educator, but I think that, when I look at the variety of different learners and how sometimes stretching that, is that ever uncomfortable because it's not everybody's learning style. So the fact that the linear, okay, I understand that, and then it allows them to grow as a learner. I can get that, and then they feel more comfortable challenging themselves because they need to see it right and then test that it's okay because linear learners are like that.
Yes, I suppose they could do it like that. And I've noticed with the older grades too, when they've already embedded algorithmic thinking, you kind of enter in there. Then you say, hey, now let's stretch your learning this way. When we're starting with grade 3, 4, let's say multiplication, then we can start with the strategic thinking. They don't know any different at that point. So in that way, we can tackle it from the other direction.
It does. I think what you've done is you've introduced, and what I saw was the fact that, numbers were almost like music, right? The way it floated and you could pull them down. But if you are linear, that more artistic way of seeing it, it actually could hurt your insides, like, as I don't get it. So I just wondered if it was, which ties into just the second one. You wondered about math nights, which I think are just a huge success. And I love the fact that you are doing so much outreach to parents and schools. What would it take or what would be needed so that every school could have a math night kit and they wouldn't have to check things out so they could do it over and over and they could build on that? Because I think that parent piece of understanding, especially with all of these resources to educate, one of our greatest supports comes from the math night by the sounds of it. So what would it take and is it important?
Do you want to answer?
Well, I think you can answer. I'll say something and then you can say otherwise, but the beauty of the math night is that it's community.
Yes.
And so part of that is the classroom community and the learning that's happening within that classroom. And so when we've been working with Barrier right now in crafting their math night, we've been working with them all year. They've been using lots of strategies and games, but we want the teachers to select games that they're using with their children already so that the children are the leaders. So they're sharing what they're doing in their classroom, they're teaching their parents, and then they're taking that back home. So it's not that it's a
Kit.
yes. So it's authentically building it with each of those schools.
It's student-centered.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Trustee Karpuk.
This is a bit of a two-part question, and I might ask Director Carson also to chime in on this too. We have our district numeracy assessment, and then we have the provincial grade, 10 numeracy assessment. And I've heard a lot of or some feedback on the provincial assessment that there's some biases in how the questions are in the questions that, depending on your cultural background, can really affect how you approach the question and whether or not you get it right and how that affects your score. And I'm just wondering, when we're developing our own district numeracy assessment, are we in some way checking for some of those cultural biases that may be asked in some of the questions? And my second question is, how much input do we get with the provincial numeracy assessment? And can we provide feedback with that?
Did you want to talk about that first and then I can, yeah, and then I'll talk about.
I think the main thing about these numeracy assessments is that they're designed to be inclusive and to allow people with different backgrounds to solve and formulate a plan that's based on their own experience and to justify it based on their own personal knowledge, cultural differences. So there isn't a right answer or wrong. It's, are they following the steps of the numeracy cycle, identifying what they're being asked, formulating a plan, solving, and then justifying their solution. But they're justifying their own plan as being valid based on their own experience. So we are not saying this isn't what we're looking for as an answer. We're looking for it as them showing that they understand that the parts of the cycle. So what maybe appear as biases are not meant to be, they're not meant to be present. They're supposed to provide opportunity for every student to answer it in their own way.
Thanks, Darren. I just actually spent the last 2 weekends marking the graduation numeracy 10 assessment, so I can tell you about the feedback. So at the end of our marking sessions, they will sit down and ask us like, okay, what do you see as student strengths and weaknesses with this particular task? And then they will also talk to us about the way the question is written. So they do take in our feedback, and we talked for probably half an hour on just one question. So they talk about, is it scaffolded for their learning? Is it clear to every learner that's coming in? Do we have the right supports for ESL students? So like they are addressing those things, and we did have that exact conversation actually Saturday. So I do know they're writing that stuff down, considering that. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Trustees, any further questions? Trustee Yofi?
And I love the example because I think kids need that concrete, I have 2 children. My older one's a bit more of a math nerd like me, and the younger one getting his head around it initially. I remember as a little guy, a lot of tiles in our house. And so I sort of mapped out an area of tiles, said, how many tiles are there? Count them all. And he counted them all. I said, what if we just did this times this? And we get the exact same thing. So you see the penny drop. You're like, okay, it's like they got to be able to connect the number to the real world, or it just becomes a bunch of squiggles. That's my concern with, we got a calculator. That's fine. That gives you a number. But what does that mean? I read an article literally today, said the Trans Mountain Pipeline is $10 billion over budget. That's $250,000 per Canadian. I went, 10 billion divided by 40 million is 250.
Yeah.
Right? This is $250 per Canadian, not 250,000. 3 orders of magnitude off, but it's in an article that's published, right? Like, and it's like, well, that's just so simple math. Like, you should be able to see like that number can't be right. But people just sort of accept these things because they're in print, and having that kind of reasoning skill is really, I think, important. That where that math literacy, you should just be able to see it. Well, that can't be right? That number's got to be wrong.
Right. Wow.
Thank you. Trustees, any further questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation and all of your wonderful question and answers. As we say at the end of every presentation, you know, you're welcome to stay for the meeting, but we absolutely understand if you depart, we we won't take offense. Thank you for being here. Superintendent Nixon, anything to conclude?
Just to say that as I'm going school to school, I'm seeing the strategies in action and I always take time. And I have to say that oftentimes the teacher often volunteers that they've had a session with you or that you've been in their schools. And that's from a wide range of different schools. So I know you're really making an impact. And I know that it's really hard when you go out to schools all the time and you're wondering, is it going to make an impact in quantitative results? But I trust it will, because when kids are using the strategies and teachers are speaking about what their understandings are, it's bound to make a huge difference in our district. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We need to get someone to open the door. Thanks so much for coming. Okay, trustees, we're going to move to reports from Superintendent of Schools. 8.1, District Employee Engagement Committee Report. Superintendent Nixon.
All right, through you, Board Chair Kershaw or Vice Chair Kershaw to the board. It is the purview of the board to annually ensure that the evaluation of the effectiveness of the district in achieving established priorities and key results is happening with students and with staff. So I'm going to turn to the status section of our report on page 122 and just share that our ultimate aim in this committee is to improve employee engagement and well-being by responding to employee needs during their entire life cycle, from choosing our district to engaging in the hiring process, living, onboarding, receiving support through mentoring, coaching, performance feedback, accessing opportunities to learn professionally, and to look forward towards succession planning and exiting. On January 31st, the District Employee Engagement Committee met to review the results of strategies in place this year and to plan for the 2024 District Employee Engagement Survey. These are the main strategies we committed to this year, and it was to improve employee recognition, employee recognition action planning, district employee recognition memo and peer stories, and the annual district employee engagement survey. So you'll see in your report from figure 1.0, employee recognition strategies and outcomes, that every employee through their supervisor has engaged in action planning to improve employee recognition. And they did that by asking employees what recognition meant to them and also what strategies the employees themselves had for improving. And we have recognized employees also through the District Employee Engagement Committee memo on a monthly basis with stories that have been submitted by peers and published. And then the draw that's done, those teams get branded items. We've received very positive feedback from this particular memo. And now when we look at employee engagement survey results, our hope is that we do see an improvement in employee recognition. The other thing we did, and that was at the conclusion of our meeting on February 1st, is we asked school and department leaders how they're using board appreciation funds. And the reports indicated that it's much appreciated to have the funds provide snacks and beverages and even meals on evenings when staff are required to stay at school or when staff have chosen just to gather informally in departments. So overall, the feedback from leaders at the school and district level is that having a clear focus on improving employee recognition has been understood and the importance of it confirmed by staff in their buildings. And that provides my report. So I'm happy to answer any questions if the board has any.
Thank you, Superintendent Nixon. Trustees, any questions, comments on this report? No? Okay. Thank you for that, Superintendent Nixon. Excellent. We'll move on to 8.2, Blue River Community Engagement Results.
All right, through you, Board Chair, or through you, Vice Chair Kershaw, to the board. So in Board Policy 2, Section 3, the board makes decisions to engage the community on matters of importance that impact the needs of all district students. Assistant Superintendents Hamlet and Riley engaged in this community consultation plan as presented on January 29th We reviewed the results from that engagement session, and Blue River staff members met with us and shared responses to the strategies that had been presented. So I'll highlight a couple of the strategies intended to invite increased enrollment in Blue River and beyond. So one of them is to emphasize outdoor programming in the school information materials, and then curricular and extracurricular activities shared between schools at Blue River and between Rack River and Bavenby. Also, we're creating 3 distinct district websites so that each school, Rack River, Bavenby, and Blue River, have distinct identities. We're taking the lead on starting a community video that will profile the school, but as well work with TNRD, the TNRD director and other community members to profile not only the school, but the community. I'm not going to go into each strategy per se, as it's listed there in the report, but I do want the board to know that I believe that the strategies that were mentioned were the ones that will make an impact. And at this point, it's very positive. There's a good energy in the community and a willingness to be focused on improving enrollment. So that concludes the report. Now, if there are questions, I do have my colleagues here to help answer them. And so I will open it up to the board.
Thank you. Trustee Sim.
Thanks very much. It was a good session. And I think the other thing that I heard is that however we can share out this message that, you know, we are looking to grow the enrollment and ensure that that's the embedded message. It's easy to distort it that, you know, it's a school in trouble when that was very clearly not the message provided there. And I think the parents online were grateful to hear that. But again, getting innovative is one of the strategies of how we can share that out, how, you know, to talk about families who are maybe looking to move there. As one participant said, it just takes 1 or 2 families and all of a sudden the entire dynamic of the school would shift. So I think that these strategies that are going to be implemented are important, but I think that community awareness is also extraordinarily important because they're the word of mouth. They're the ones that, you know, can also sort of seed conversations with different people. So I'm looking forward to the communication that will come out that will allow the community members to share the fact that we are all moving in the same direction and with the ambition of anchoring that school in Blue River with success.
Thank you, Trustee Sim. Any other questions, comments on this report? Okay, seeing none, we will move to 8.3 out of province field trip.
Right, through you, Vice Chair Kershaw, to the board. So as per board policy 2, the board approves any field trip for any length of time that takes place outside of the province of BC. And here this evening is Assistant Superintendent Hamlet, who will provide us a report on a proposed Sahali secondary field trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Nixon. To you, Vice Chair Kershaw, to the board. Sorry, you threw me off because anyways. This is a proposed field trip, out of province field trip for Sahali Secondary for 4 students to be accompanied by 2 teachers to go to the UNESCO National Youth Conference. This year, the UNESCO National Youth Conference is in Toronto. It is focused on climate change and sustainability. Students will have an opportunity to collaborate with other students across Canada and work towards creating an action plan upon returning to their own school. The conference promises to be hands-on, interactive, and bilingual. It is hosted at York University and the Royal Ontario Museum. Sahali Secondary has been a UNESCO school since 2019. And as a UNESCO school, it's got a certification. The conference is free to students and staff, this includes accommodation, meals. The cost of the flights can be up to subsidized up to $400 from the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. So even the flights are going to be at a lower rate. The information about the potential subsidy and the parents' responsibility to book their child's flights has been provided to the families, and that's been communicated. Some people have points, some people have flight credits, so that cost is a bit unknown. But so, of course, Administrative Procedure 506, financial assistance will apply. The students, there's 2 grades 10 students and 2 grade 12 students from Sahali. And as the plans for the field trip to continue to be finalized, I'll work with Principal Brady to ensure that the administrative procedure is followed and that it's for a recommendation has been provided, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Hamlet. Trustees, do you have questions on this report? Trustee Karpuk.
Just wondering how the 4 students are being selected to go.
There is a UNESCO club, so the 4 students, that's a good question, trustee, through Vice Chair, to trustee Karpuk. What I was understood, it was their parent information night and they, like, the club is not massive, so they had this offer, they put it out and these students took up the opportunity. That's my understanding.
Thank you. Trustees, other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Trustees, this report is for recommendation. The recommendation is the Board of Education approves the 4 students in Sahali Secondary to travel to Toronto, Ontario from April 8th to April 11th, 2024 as presented. Moved by Chair Greaves, seconded by Trustee McKelvey. Trustees, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent Nixon, 8.4, good news.
Through you, Vice Chair Kershaw, to the board. So in the 2022-2027 District Strategic Plan, the board is committed to the value commitments of relationships, connections, well-being, equity, and sustainability. Celebrating good news in our schools recognizes stories that share about how we build relationships, foster well-being, and aim for equity and sustainability. We met on February 1st with all directors, managers, and principals, and we got together to engage in employee recognition planning. At the very start of that meeting, district and school leaders shared good news stories. There is one I would like to draw the board's attention to simply because of how adorable it actually is. So on page 50 of the board package, an HVAC technician was called by Director McDonald to go to Marion Schilling to rescue a kindergarten student's teddy bear from the roof after it had been thrown up on the roof. And I was sent a picture of that child today. The child was truly overjoyed. And those are the kinds of small stories that bring joy to the hearts of children and parents and staff that really this report is intended to capture. So thank you.
That's an extra sweet one. Trustees, any questions, comments on this report? Seeing none, thank you, Superintendent Nixon, for that. We will move to 8.5, Superintendent's report.
Thank you through you, Board Chair Vice Chair Kershaw, to the board. Based on Board Policy 12, part of the evaluation structure for the superintendent role is to submit a monthly report on activities. So this is my report from January 12th to February 9th, and I am happy to take any questions should the board have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Nixon. Trustees, do you have any questions on this report? Seeing none, that concludes your reports for this evening.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to reports from Secretary Treasurer. First is 9.1, Parkrest Elementary opening date.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kershaw, through you to the board. This report is provided to update the board this evening on information regarding the rebuild of Parkrest Elementary School. And I would like to invite Director McDonald and Assistant Superintendent Riley up to provide the board with more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Cassidy. I'll refer the board to page 54 of the public package. I'll go down the bottom of the page at the status section as the board has been updated several times about where we're at. And we continue to have ongoing material supply and labor challenges. And as such, Dawson Walls Construction has provided myself with an updated schedule that has moved the completion date to March 28th, 2024. Once their work is complete, we will still need at least 2 weeks to verify all systems are operating correctly and to make sure our own systems such as Wi-Fi are running properly. So this means that a potential move of Parkrest Elementary staff and students from the George Hillier building to the new Parkrest Elementary would not happen until mid to late April. And as such, myself and Assistant Superintendent Riley recommend that Parkrest Elementary staff and students remain at the George Hillier building for the remainder of the 23-24 school year. Also, we are recommending the first day of students or students attending school at the rebuilt Parkrest Elementary is to be Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024.
Thank you, Director McDonald. Trustees, do you have questions on the report? I have one. I'm just wondering, I seem to recall that there was some works that would go into the George Hillier building before the full reopening. Is that accurate? And will that have any impacts?
Thank you for the question. There are some minor things, but nothing that will be impacted by this. We will still be, I think in the interim plan, once Parkrest is actually ready, we will start the moving process. While school's in, we can get in there in the morning, load up a truck and then take it over to the new building. Yeah, so there will be no issues with timing for us.
Okay, thank you. Trustees, any further questions on this report? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Move the motion. So Chair Grieve is going to move the motion that the Board of Education approves the first day for students attending school at the rebuilt Parkrest Elementary is Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024, seconded by Trustee Karpuk. Trustees, is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. We will move then to 9.2. Draft 24-25 annual facility grant spending plan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kershaw. Through you to the board. As per Board Policy 2, role of the board shall approve the annual spending plan for the annual facilities grant. So I would like to invite Director McDonald to present the board with the spending plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Cassidy. And on page 58 of the package, you will see the proposed spending plan for this year. You'll see there's lots of round numbers because we're just starting to get projects out to tender. And once we confirm them, we will have exact numbers, which I'll bring back in June for finalization of the spending plan as I did last year. And you'll also note there's a few categories that are to be determined. And typically what we do is we allow ourselves a bit of contingency in these. So if we have projects that come over, we can cover them. And the ones that are to be determined are all small projects that we can do anytime throughout the year. So once we know where our other big projects land, then we can allocate money to those. Yep.
Trustees, any questions on this report? Okay, seeing none. Move the motion. Trustee Karpuk is going to move the motion that the Board of Education approves the 24-25 annual facilities grant spending plan as presented. Seconded by Trustee Jules. Trustees, is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Secretary Treasurer, we will move on to 9.3, Long Range Facilities Plan Report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kershaw. Through you to the board. As per Board Policy 2, role of the board shall approve the 5-year capital plan, the facilities budget, and receive the long-range facility plan as information. I would like to invite Director McDonald to present on the long-range facility plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Cassidy. And before I start, just a few things. I want to thank Corey Edwards in our communication department. He does such a nice job making my plain black and white look fabulous, because I would just do plain black and white if it was up to me. A few other things. I also want to thank Assistant Superintendents Riley and Hamblett for their contribution, as well as our new Assistant Director of Facilities, Ryan Mallarud, who is here with us tonight. And since he's only been here 4 weeks, I told him I wouldn't make him present it. I feared that might be a little unfair. And also need to thank the superintendent, secretary, treasurer for their proofreading as always, which always makes it just a little bit better. I've shared my screen, so the slides are similar to what I presented in previous years with updated numbers. So the Ministry of Education requires districts to have a long-range facility plan. When we get into enrollment has increased every year for the last 7 years, and in some areas it has increased rapidly, and I'll be going through that when we get into the enrollment projections part. In the elementary divisions, elementary enrollment is increasing. Most of our urban elementary schools have very high or over 100% capacity utilization, and our rural elementary schools remain quite stable. Urban secondary schools have very high or over 100% capacity utilization, particularly on the south shore of Kamloops. And rural secondary schools have capacity utilization generally near or below 50%. In the report, we talk about portables. So as of September of this year, we have 57 portables being used for classroom type spaces, and approximately 8% of our students are in portables. And to change back repurposed multi-purpose rooms and LERT rooms to classroom spaces would require 29 portables at a cost of approximately $5 million. Now, again, I always bring this up. Our enrollment projections for this report are head counts, not FTEs, which does not match how we budget. We are aligned with the City of Kamloops official community plan, and they're based on maximum student yields or student per household for all new developments. The challenges with enrollment projections, the farther out, the less accurate they are. Difficult to account for external factors such as pace and size of new developments. Cost of housing, including mortgage rules and interest rates, which we are seeing that now. And then we have really no control over what's happening in the general economy. And internal factors, do new students match locations of available space? Assistant Superintendent Riley has a spreadsheet. And at any given time, we have approximately 500 spaces in the elementary sector. If just students would come to the right classroom at the right grade at the right time. But it doesn't actually work that way. So this is the 10-year enrollment projection from this year's plan. You probably won't recognize it looking at the curve, but it is continued growth, but it's a bit slower rate than in previous years. So if you average this out, we're looking at about 150 students growth per year. Averaged out, and a lot of that is migration into our district is down a bit compared to previous years. Birth rates are starting to flatten out, and also within Kamloops itself, there are quite a few developments that are not taking place currently. So when we talk about capacity utilization, it's the number of students divided by the ministry operating capacity. And ministry operating capacity is formula driven. In elementary, it's 19 students per kindergarten class and an average of 23.29 for all of the classrooms. In secondary, it's 25 students per classroom, and not all spaces are counted, such as gyms. So district-wide capacity utilization, I always start at 0809 because that's when we are about at the bottom of enrollment. 23-24, so this year we're at 92%, and with the enrollment projections, 28-29, we're at 94%, and in 10 years' time, 98%, and that's district-wide. So when we break that down for rural schools, in this year, elementary is at 57%, and I do have the asterisks there, that this is skewed down by our smaller rural elementary schools, such as Blue River, Westwold, Vavenby. When we look at our larger rural areas, all those elementary schools are actually quite full. Secondary is at 47% this year, and then in 28-29, elementary is projected to be at 55, secondary at 51, and 10 years out, elementary at 55, and secondary at 51. Kamloops area schools in 23-24 this year, we're at 110% for elementary, 96 at secondary. 5 years out, 109% for elementary, 100% for secondary, and 10 years out, 115% for elementary and 106% for secondary. And I can tell you some of the fluctuations that you see, like why doesn't elementary keep going up, is when we open George Hilliard as a school next year, we have increased capacity at Parkcrest. We're actually adding capacity without necessarily adding students. When we look at areas with significant enrollment pressures, Sahali Secondary and South Kamloops Secondary, two of our South Shore secondary schools. I'm not going to read every number, but you can see they're both quite full. And the board did approve a catchment change several years ago in an effort to try to balance the enrollment pressures between these two schools, because Sahali was going to take off in the 180, 200% range, and South Cam was going to stick around 100%. The elementary, this is all the South Shore. So again, a lot of these schools are quite full. They're projected to be really full. You can see Pacific Way and McGowan Park Elementary go close to 250%. And a lot of that is based on all of the developable land up in that southwest sector of Kamloops. Some of that we keep moving out further. If developments haven't started, we keep pushing them out 2 years, because in my mind, it always takes at least 2 years from a raw piece of land to get services in, get a house built, and to get people living there. Aberdeen Elementary, which again, the board approved a catchment change a couple years ago where we took students from Pacific Way and put them into Aberdeen Elementary, again, in an effort to try to balance some of the enrollment pressures. Dufferin Elementary, again, is quite full and looking to stay quite full. And Summit Elementary, this is the first year this has actually been on this list. Again, we're seeing a trend in that area of increased enrollment. And then sort of other schools around the district, Westmount Elementary. Now, if you follow it out, it's dropping. And I do put an asterisk beside that and a comment below the table that there are 100 students from Bachelor Heights attending either David Thompson or West Side. And typically these students would be going to Westmount Elementary. But the board made, I think, a courageous decision to send students to 2 other schools to try to deal with the significant overcapacity issues at Westmount Elementary at the time. But I think it's important to know that even though Westmount's going down, there's still a significant number of students in that area. Juniper Ridge Elementary, again, with the reopening of Ralph Bell, moving students there. Juniper Ridge looks quite a bit better than it used to. Again, I've got the double asterisks at the bottom, so indicating we have 119 students from Juniper Ridge attending Ralph Bell Elementary. So again, the Juniper Ridge area is still quite full, even though the board has made decisions to reopen Ralph Bell and redistribute some of the students there. And then Beatty Elementary, again, is getting quite full and will continue to be quite full. So when we look at the next 5 years, based on the crystal ball that I don't have, we're looking like we have to repurpose 11 rooms for classrooms in various locations and likely adding 19 portables. And quite a few of those portables will come from what I'm calling surplus as they become available. For instance, we'll have 5 portables available at George Hilliard after this year. We'll have 4 portables available from Brock Middle School / secondary after this year. And we do have some surplus schools at some of the other schools like Juniper Ridge, where space has been freed up. So when we look at the neighborhood analysis, the southwest sector for elementary, we've got our ministry funded capital projects. So we've got a new elementary school in Pineview Valley, which is nearing design completion. And we are trying to get out to tender this week or next week. On the board's capital plan, we also have a new elementary school in Aberdeen East. And then longer term, a new elementary school in Aberdeen West. So the interim measures, we'll have to continue adding portables as required. And once Pineview Valley Elementary is open, a catchment review of the Southwest Sector Elementary Schools should be completed to determine if revised catchments can help balance the enrollment pressures in these elementary schools. Southwest Sector for secondary schools, in the capital plan, we've got the new secondary school in Aberdeen, and interim measures, we'll have to continue adding portables at Sahali Secondary and South Kamloops Secondary until the new secondary school is built. In the Dallas Juniper Ridge Valley View corridor for elementary, on our capital plan, we have a new elementary school in Juniper Ridge West and a new larger capacity replacement school for Dallas Elementary. And our good old standby of interim measures, add portables. And then for that corridor in secondary, the addition at Valley View Secondary looks like it'll provide capacity for quite a while yet. North Kamloops Brocklehurst in elementary, we've got our ministry funded capital project of Parkcrest Elementary. And based on my previous report, that will be done in the next few months and open for September. And again, if we need to, we will add portables. And in the secondary division, Brocklehurst Secondary should have sufficient capacity for enrollment growth. And we may need to look at reconfiguring some spaces at NorCam Secondary for increased enrollment, but again, it should have sufficient capacity for a long time. West Side Elementary, we've got a new elementary school in Bachelor Heights on the docket. And again, until then, we will add portables. West Side Secondary should have sufficient capacity for enrollment growth that is projected. And the downtown corridor of Kamloops, the interim measures BD Elementary will add portables to. Longer term, depending on how infill happens and how the infill may or may not change, we may need to look at a site down there. And Lloyd George Elementary, being a school of choice, is capped at its maximum capacity. Downtown for secondary, on our capital plan for replacement projects, we have South Kamloops Secondary as a replacement. And in the interim, South Kamloops Secondary has sufficient capacity for the downtown projected enrollments, but additional portables will be needed due to the catchment change with Sahalee Secondary till the new secondary school in Aberdeen is built. In our rural communities, we have Sun Peaks K-12 school on our capital plan. We are monitoring Raft River because it's close. Last summer, some renovations were completed that created potentially 2 new classroom spaces. New portables at Sun Peaks if required. And just as a note, the capacity of Sun Peaks has increased to 159 due to portables, but I also need to recognize that 100% of the school is portables. So it's kind of a fictitious capacity number, for lack of a better word. Again, on the board's capital plan for new schools, we have the elementary school in Pine View Valley, which I mentioned is nearing design completion. We've got the elementary school in Bachelor Heights, which we are waiting for the Crown grant. Secondary school in Aberdeen, the elementary school in Juniper West, the K-12 school in Sun Peaks, and then 2 new schools in Aberdeen. For replacement schools, we got Dallas Elementary with increased capacity, South Kamloops Secondary, Bird Edwards, K. Bingham Elementary, Raft River Elementary, A.E. Perry Elementary, Marion Schilling Elementary, and BD Elementary. As part of the capital plan for site acquisition, we have a secondary school site in Aberdeen and 2 elementary school sites in Aberdeen. And as I mentioned to the board previously, the elementary school site for Aberdeen West is really just a placeholder at this point. There is nothing to buy. There's no parcel identified or anything like that, but it's just a placeholder so we know we will need something in the future. And then as far as the capital plan, just for future projects, we'll be watching BD Elementary to see if it grows beyond the capacity and a couple portables. We are a bit landlocked there and it's a difficult site to add a whole bunch more portables to. Then the ministry project approval process, the board has seen this schematic flow chart before and just kind of indicates where our projects are at. So Pine View Valley Elementary, as far as the ministry's approval process goes, is in project implementation. Bachelor Heights Elementary is at project definition report stage, and all our other projects are just in that little revolving loop of no, please resubmit next year. So. And then facilities renewal. This is why we have replacement schools on our capital plan. Over 87% of our schools are 40+ years old. Almost 60% of our schools are 50+ years old. And as a district, we apply for all the grants to maintain our schools as best we can. So the annual facility grant, we don't actually apply for. The ministry just gives it to us. And as we did tonight, the board approves how we allocate that money. But we do apply for the carbon neutral capital program and the school enhancement program every year. And we have been successful in getting projects every year. As far as facility renewal, the Ministry of Education has their own capital asset management system, and even that system indicates a significant gap between the required funding to maintain these buildings and what we're actually being provided. And then although it's not under my purview anymore, I still do the slide for student transportation because it is impacted by everything that's in the facilities plan. So currently, as a district, we are transporting about 4,700 students daily. Our administrative procedure is generally based on the old Ministry of Education guidelines regarding walk limits. And where schools or areas are experiencing enrollment pressures, the corresponding bus routes are typically experiencing capacity issues. And again, talking with Director Christensen, she anticipates we require 5 new routes and buses over the next 5 years. And the BC Tripartite Education Agreement is reviewed annually with all of the bands. So the key points, enrollment projections show continued growth for the foreseeable future to over 17,000 students by 2033. Space challenges will continue and portables will be required. Catchment changes need to be considered where feasible, but as a district, there aren't many options left. I did mention once Pineview Valley Elementary is over, I think would be a good idea to review the southwest sector to see what that looks like. And ministry funded capital projects are urgently needed and new bus routes will be required. So thank you.
Thank you, Director McDonald. Very informative report. Trustees, questions? Chair Grieve? And then I've got Trustee Jules and Trustee Karpuk.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that report, Director McDonald. I had a question and I don't know if you have an answer to this. So I know that we have ongoing discussions about our capital needs, but then you look at the replacement schools. How often, like what, do we have like criteria and do we know how often schools are actually being tapped for replacement provincially? Like, is that something that, like, so I understand, like I look at South Kamloops just as South Cam as an example, but I'm just wondering like how realistic is that ask? Do we know?
Well, I can tell you, I believe it was back in 2016, when we had South Kamloops replacement on our list, the then Assistant Deputy Minister Shanna Mason came up. And I did take her on a tour of South Kamloops Secondary, and she did report when she met with the board that there's no way they would replace that school in the condition it's in. And I do know when you look at the overall provincial funding and how they're doing it, they are struggling just dealing with expansion and enrollment growth. So I think it's fair to say I will not see a replacement school in my tenure here. I'm hoping that we'll get most of the new schools built, but I think we need to have them on the capital plan to keep it known that yes, we have enrollment pressures, but we also have other schools that aren't going to last forever.
Supplemental. And I'm curious, so in 2016, was there a reason given behind why they wouldn't support like South Cam, for example, as replacement? Just for myself, I wasn't obviously a member of the board at that time. And I'm just sort of curious, what criteria do you need to meet to actually be deemed a replaceable building? Because
Yep. Well, when I walked her through her condition or her comment was the school's in way too good condition to be considered for replacement. So I don't know what would actually convince them to replace a school. And I think, as I mentioned, they're struggling with building enough new schools for enrollment growth. They have significant seismic issues in the Lower Mainland and on the island. So I would have to ask the ministry, but.
No, that's fair enough. I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you. I had Trustee Jules, Trustee Karpuk, and then I've got one.
I'm just wondering if you've factored in some consideration of the province's new mandates with regards to increased housing levels. And they've set some fairly ambitious targets for the city of Kamloops. And they've also taken away somewhat the city's ability to manage growth in specific areas. How is that potentially going to impact us, and do you have any way of sort of, factoring this into your analysis?
So I would say there's a partial bit of it in this analysis. If you go back to, I believe it was 2020, when I presented information to the board about maximum yield enrollment projections, part of the concept there was that that would allow for some densification, and we would still partially be covered. Now, in terms of these new provincial announcements, a lot of it is not included because I don't know where it would be. I have met with city planning officials, and I think they're trying to figure out what this means as well. And my comment was to them, I hope there's been some thought about schools if we're going to build all these housing units, because we're full. And in a lot of cases where they might contemplate building housing units, we're full. So it may be a big challenge for us going forward. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Director McDonald. I had one of the slides that you had struck me that we've already lost 29 of our multipurpose and LART rooms. And we're looking to likely lose another 11 more, which I wouldn't have actually thought we had any left. So that means that we have repurposed a total of, in 5 years, we'll have repurposed a total of 40 multipurpose and LART rooms, which is, the equivalent again of another couple of schools. Not really a question, I guess, just something that really struck me in the presentation.
Yeah, so that it's kind of past and future, right? So not all of that 40 is for the next 5 years. That's what the district's already had to do in the past to deal with enrollment growth. And then looking forward, we may have to do more.
Yeah, and I find that really unfortunate, because I think that we all know as a board that those are important spaces. So it's just unfortunate reality. Trustees, other questions? Trustee Sim?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't know if the board has looked at responding to the Ministry of, I was just reading about, the housing minister laments Kamloops to miss housing targets. But if it's a wholesome, view of a community, is it not just the Ministry of Education that we're directing our comments to, but we're also directing it to the Ministry of Housing. And I don't think anybody doesn't want more housing. It's just the infrastructure, which includes the education of our children. Even the CBC interview today, 3-year waiting list for daycare. Is it worth a letter back to multiple ministries saying, it's not just a one-lane discussion, but it's multi-pronged. And I don't know if we've discussed that, or if it's something just to ponder.
Yeah, and I don't think we have discussed it much at length yet, because I don't know that we know what it looks like, but.
No, you're right. I don't think we do, but I do reflect on the fact that we keep hearing just one-lane commentaries from each individual ministry as opposed to the collective, whereas a school is actually the center of that conversation, because we are that education component. And now that ministry has also been expected to take on the childcare. So is it fair to impose something that can't be done and then, be troubled by it? It's just, I'll leave it there, but I hadn't thought of it in quite that way, is the fact that this is not just one ministry that maybe this board needs to be speaking to, but in support of, the trickle down effect that will be impossible to maintain, and that quality of life that, British Columbia, wants to be proud of.
Chair Grave, you had a comment?
Yeah, it's actually, I guess, a question, and I don't know if this is for the board or whether it's for Director McDonald or Dr. Nixon or a collective of everybody. But one of the questions that I have then is when you look at these kind of initiatives that are, or the comments that are being put forward by different ministries, do we know whether or not capital funding is announced in those areas where they are telling them to build more housing? Like, so when is that a question that do we know the answer to that, or is that something that we can find out? So if there are these communities where they're saying this is like an area where we're wanting this initiative to take place, or we have expectations of certain number of houses, or SROs or whatever to be built, that is there capital funding in tandem with the ministry then to say like, we're actually going to approve new projects in those communities based on that?
Currently, I'm aware of nothing, and the people I deal with down at the ministry have not indicated anything along those lines.
Supplemental? Is
Supplemental.
that a question we can ask? Like, is that a question we can legitimately ask? And I think maybe, again, sort of from a facilities perspective, maybe that is a conversation that operationally we have, but also as the governor's, right? And with the city as well.
Yeah, I think that that's a really valid question, because I know that, you know, we certainly, we aren't keeping up with our current capital needs, never mind if we see an increase in housing starts. Trustee Karpuk, you had a comment?
I'm thinking about, long-term, we currently have space on the North Shore. We've effectively reopened Happy Vale by moving truck to it. But I'm also wondering about, do we foresee a time in the future where we may be asking the city to give us back John Todd?
It's a good question. I think that would be a fair ways out there, because we will have space in George Hilliard, K Bingham, and even Parkrest, at least for the near future. And to need to reopen a school, we would need, I think, to have some significant challenges at several schools on the North Shore, similar to what we've had to do Southwest Sector, Juniper, the Valley View corridor. So I wouldn't see that anytime in the 5 to 10 year plan.
Part of the reason that I'm asking that is because I know that the city has really has redesignated or redrawn their ideas for what they want to happen in that area, just off of the Overlanders Bridge and just on Trunk Hill there, that they're trying to move ahead with a lot more density. They want to move away from the, one-story businesses that with the giant parking lots that are happening there, and that they really want to rejuvenate that particular area. And given that there's a significant change in direction of what they want to see in that particular area, wondering if that then impacts catchment that we may be forced to reopen John Todd.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And as a matter of fact, since Assistant Director Mallarud has been here, we've been redoing all the work I did 5 years ago around student yields to look at some of those things. And what we're seeing is in the high density apartment type complexes, we're still not seeing a lot of students. You may remember a few years ago, like Marion Chilling was a concern because of all the potential growth at Orchards Walk. It was all high density, but several of those buildings are 55 plus. So we're just not seeing the student loads in those types of buildings yet. That's yet, but we're still in the first few years of significant increases in house pricing and all those. So it may be something we see in the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Thank you. Trustees, further questions on this report? Seeing none. Thank you, Director McDonald. Secretary Treasurer Cassidy, anything to conclude?
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Director McDonald and Assistant Director Mallarud for their hard work. It's an exceptional work that they've done this evening, and you can just get a little bit of a flavor on how very complex it is. So I do appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes your reports for this evening.
It does, thank you.
Star of the show tonight. Okay. We'll move from Secretary Treasurer's reports. We have no new business this evening, nor business arising from public inquiries. We'll move to Chair's report. Chair Grieve.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry my voice is all crackly from yelling at a high school basketball game. We did not win. Well, we being West Side. Sorry. So in terms of the chair's report, so I know that in the packages that were circulated was a list of board committees and schedules memorandum that went around as well. Trustees had mentioned during the board workshop and other times that the calendar had some conflicts and that it would be important to confirm the schedule and resubmit it. So I really want to thank Chelsea for all of her work in reviewing everything and providing the board with a complete list of the external committees that reflects more clearly all of the work that trustees are engaged in. So I would ask if there is, again, a desire from the board to actually consider making a motion to accept or the board approve the board standing committee meeting dates for 2024 as presented and circulated.
Moved by Trustee McKelvey. Seconded by Trustee Hickson. Trustees, discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Then I want to talk just briefly about academies. I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Nixon, Assistant Superintendent Hamlet, Director Keenline, Principal Brady, Principal Perry, and Teacher Greg Stewart for providing two stories. Sorry about the recent addition of the two new academies for secondary students in the fall. Having the District Health Sciences Academy at Brocklehurst Secondary School and the Outdoor Education Academy at Sahalee Secondary School will offer students another pathway to explore their passions, which I think is really important to highlight. So thank you very much for all of that. Celebrating diversity, the board is committed to the cultural and identity priority in which every student is invited into our schools to be who they are and for everyone to learn about each other's backgrounds, cultures, and histories through curricular and extracurricular opportunities. I'm really appreciative of the many activities and resources created in our district, and I wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge a few of them. So the Diversity Film Festival, Lunar New Year, National Flag Day, Black History Month in February, and French Immersion Celebration Week, just to name a few. Also, like taking another important days. So thank you for those who took part in the Unplug and Play last week, which led so nicely, into the World Read Aloud Day and Safer Internet Day. And then I also want to share the National Acts of Kindness is coming up in February the 17th, and Family Day weekend, February 19th, to remind us all to take time with our families and for those who we care about deeply. So that being said, that concludes my, I'm just kidding, it doesn't. I didn't want to make you panic. I wanted to just take a minute and we wanted to really have a chance to celebrate someone who's been with the district for a very long time, someone who has given a lot to the Board of Education and to the operations team here at School District 73. Assistant Superintendent Mochikas, thank you from the Board of Education, honestly, for all of the incredibly hard work that you have done. I can't even begin to list all the things that you've been a part of creating here in terms of district culture, work with Aboriginal Education Council, work with anti-racism, with diversity inclusion, all of these things that you have brought, along with a passion for the work that you do, a sense of humor that will be missed around here completely, but the incredible work that you do as well. Well, maybe some of us will try to find a way to keep it alive, but it's never the same. It won't be the same year without you. So thank you for everything, Assistant Superintendent Mochikas, and we wish you all the best on your future endeavors. We'll be out here cheering you on for sure.
Thank you very much. No speech prepared or no?
I don't know that this is appropriate, but once you leave, we will proudly display our non-Toronto Maple Leaf attire all throughout the building. Anyway, that concludes my chair's report this evening.
There we go. Thanks, Chair Grave. Okay, that concludes the chair's report. We have trustee reports and inquiries. Trustee Sim.
Thanks very much. First of all, I just want to give a great amount of gratitude to the Trades and Transition team. And it's really exciting to see how the health sciences is branching out into a variety of different things. And today I heard that Discovery Days is going to take on a real focus with some of that health lens. And working with some of the local physicians in Kamloops. So that's exciting the way that that's going. What also really struck me is that the way that the polling was used for the kids. So if I look at the district health science surveyed 396 students and 301 indicated interest in attending a district health team. And then there was the development of the outdoor education where 68% of Sahali students responded to a survey. And what I'm wondering about that is we've talked about the value and the importance of student voice. And is there a way to integrate more of this student feedback in the way that we shape directions and pathways for students? And whether that be with our urban or with our rural, but how do we attract it? Because this is incredible participation, as anybody who writes surveys does. You know, and so it seems by just two anecdotal examples that kids are eager to share their input. So I was just kind of reflecting on that is as the team starts developing new pathways and different ways, is that this seems to be a very successful approach that's been implemented, and how more of that could be done as we chart towards next year's and the vision and shaping it. So I just wanted to share that, and that the work is just really manifesting with incredible results. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sim. Trustees, any comments, questions on that? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move notice of meetings. Oh, sorry, we have no motions. Notice of meetings, schedule of upcoming meetings. We have finance and planning on February 12th, family of schools from February 13th to the 15th, schools reopening and North Shore Catchment Committee meetings on February 13th, Board of Education and City of Kamloops Council annual meeting on February 15th. Okay. Policy Committee meeting on February 16th, District Parent Advisory Council meeting on February 20th, SD 73 Business Company meeting on February 21st, Aboriginal Education Council meeting on February 22nd, and our next regular public board meeting will occur on Monday, February 26th here at the school board office. And just for trustees, for your your family of schools meetings, you should have your calendar invites in your calendars for the ones, and there's also this sheet that outlines which sessions you're participating in, groups.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to the one on February the 14th. So is there a rotation like last year, or are you only seeing the schools that you've been identified to?
Through you, Vice Chair Kershaw, to you, Trustee Sim, you can see any of the groups in the rotations. That sheet that you have is only an exercise to show that you could see all of your schools within the rotation. So you will see 3 rotations of group 1. You may not have 3 schools in group 1. So you would choose another school for one of your sessions. And then there'll be a changeover, and there'll be group 2 schools that will be part of a conversation. And you'll choose 3 of those within 3 rotations.
So a total of 6 is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you're trustee Carpuck, and then there'll be a special extra session for you with NORCAM as a 7th one. Just to accommodate the total number of schools that she has in her portfolio.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
So
Thank
it'll
you.
feel a lot like last year when you get there.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know because it was so good last year.
And certainly you are most welcome to attend any of them and any of the days, if you would like to come to others as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, trustees, any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Moved by trustee Carpuck. We are adjourned. Thank you.